Welcome to War Room Impeachment, Thursday evening, January 16th, the year of our Lord 2020, episode 118 of War Room Impeachment. I'm Raheem Kassam, joined by Jason Miller here in the historic Breitbart Embassy. Lots to go through today. The Lev Parnas story still not going away, though arguably, given what we know about Mr. Parnas, sent Lev as far as Rachel Maddow and Anderson Cooper are concerned. We'll get into that. We also will get into the procedures from today, some very, I think, somber moments, frankly, if you care about the Constitution of the United States and the future of the country, taking place here on Capitol Hill. The announcement from the Government Accountability Office as well, the GAO claiming that the Trump administration, specifically the Office of Management and Budget, the guys effectively under the purview of the White House, they're saying, the GAO is saying the OMB broke the law when they withheld the aid to Ukraine, this famous aid to Ukraine that appears to have kicked off this whole thing, ostensibly at the very least. And people will remember, I hope, long-time listeners to War Room Impeachment will remember, I hope, that back in December, I pulled out a little bit that I saw about the Impoundment Control Act. Saw this sort of background chatter, this noise going on in the background about the Impoundment Control Act. Saw that they had updated the House website on the ICA. Remember that, Jason? In late October. A lot of search engine optimization went into that, by the way. It's very hard to get those pages up the top of Google rankings immediately as you update them, but they did it. And we said at the time, hey, the ICA is going to become a thing. They're going to do something with the Impoundment Control Act. And so we're going to talk about what the Impoundment Control Act is, where it came from, and how actually a great many presidents, JFK, Bill Clinton, Barack Obama, and others, all opposed the Impoundment Control Act of 1974. We'll get into that, and it may sound slightly boring, but it really isn't. It is an integral part. And actually, I don't know, maybe this is just me being nerdy, Jason. I find that sort of thing fascinating, about how the administrative state really came together, how fiefdoms were created in terms of congressional spending, because frankly, Americans should care. This is where your money goes. This is how it's apportioned. When all that cash comes out of your bank account, your hard labor goes to the government in your taxes, this is how it gets divvied up. I feel like people should care about that. I want to throw it to Jason in just 1 second. I want to say thank you to our partners, the John Fredericks Radio Network, Salem, the Broadcasting Network, Newsmax TV, America's Voice.news, and you can catch us on all podcast platforms. Jason, where are we today?
Yeah, so today we had the House impeachment articles that were read aloud in the Senate. Chief Justice John Roberts was sworn in to preside over the Senate trial, and also each of the 100 U.S. senators were sworn in as jurors in this process as well. And a very long process, and as you said, is a very somber process. Very much a difference from yesterday's Pelosi Penpalooza event that she had going.
the gold pens that
Yes.
she was giving out. Again, I wonder who paid for those.
Yeah, so your taxpayer
taxpayer
money was going to get gold pens, so Nancy Pelosi could sign these articles of impeachment and then give one to Shifty Adam Schiff, Hakeem Jeffries, and all the rest. But today
gold pens with her gold signature on them, by the way.
I'm going to get worked up. My blood pressure's already on full peak today because of the impeachment.
Okay,
but Nancy Pelosi's just absolutely nuts here. But today was a much different atmosphere. And this is very much an era of seriousness. As we begin this entire process, a number of things are going to go on the next couple of days. The House is actually going to have written arguments that they send over, and then the White House has an opportunity then to go and respond back, and then the House has a rebuttal that they get to do, and then Tuesday morning is when we will formally get going. Actually, I expect it'll probably be noon or noon to 6, somewhere in that range, 6 days a week starting on Tuesday. We're going to be at this thing full time.
Yeah. Yeah. You want to go to the Christine Amanpour thing? Where do you want to go with this?
Yeah, so very interesting clip. So Christiane Amanpour, obviously notable foreign affairs correspondent for CNN.
Not that notable if I got her name wrong.
But also, she's still a big deal on CNN-I, the CNN international property, which for those folks who are maybe aren't familiar with it, because in most places around the U.S. you cannot get it on your local cable system. But if you're traveling abroad and you turn on CNN, you're not getting the exact same CNN you get here. You get some of the same shows, but because of the different day parts, you might have one show that's hosted by someone in the UK, or another show that's hosted by someone in Hong Kong. Anyways, but the programming is notably different. So Christiane Amanpour sat down today with Ukraine Foreign Minister, and I think I have the pronunciation right, Vadim Pristeko.
Yep.
Okay. And essentially, the minister said, don't believe anything that Lev Parnas was saying that prior to becoming the foreign minister, he was the deputy foreign minister. He would have been the person that was having all these conversations, said that they didn't need any sort of back channel because their communication with the Trump State Department was very strong. He said all of this, essentially said it was fake news, and so it is BS. And I think, Raheem, you have a clip on that if you want to play. I think this is worth, it's a minute or two long, but it's worth diving into.
We can break into it if they're getting, if it's getting boring. But ladies and gentlemen at home, if you're listening to this, listen very closely, because we have been told for so very long that you know, the filters that the media puts on these individuals, on the documents that are coming out and all this stuff, that they're the things keeping us informed. They're the ones who know what to look for and what to present. It just seems to be the case, though, that whenever they actually go and interview people in their own words about the efficacy of somebody like Lev Parnas to be this big political mover and shaker and be instructed by the president of the United States to go, and what was his note on his thing that said, work my magic, right? Lev said he's going to work his magic. Great magic that landed you on bail with the Southern District of Manhattan, and now you're on the opposite team that you claimed to be on 3 months ago. That's some serious magic, right? Should we play the clip?
Let's do it.
Lev Parnas, a crony of Rudy Giuliani, who is the president's personal lawyer, has now spoken out, as you know, and he has said several things, mostly that he did carry a very explicit message from the president via Rudy Giuliani that there would need to be a quid pro quo if Ukraine was going to continue getting any kind of assistance, financial, military, political, whatever kind of assistance. And furthermore, he has now said that he has spoken to key officials within President Zelensky's circle. Since you are one of those, and you were when this happened, did you get that message from Lev Parnas?
It's all over Ukrainian media as well, today and yesterday. And strangely enough, my name was not mentioned, although I'm Minister of Foreign Affairs. And frankly, I never spoke with this individual. And again, frankly, I don't trust any word he is now saying. The assistance which he is referring to was reviewed each and every year, annually, at least twice, and half a year at the end of the year. So we knew that this assistance is to be reviewed. Sometimes it would be cut because of some political understanding of what is to be done in Ukraine, sometimes being erased, which is now we're observing. At the end of the year, we would receive even more than it was planned. I understand that this individual, which I don't know personally, but he is now trying to save his own case. And I don't trust what he's saying. And I was so tired of these questions about our role in impeachment. What we are trying to tell Americans that we are so happy to have bilateral support from both parties, and we will be happy to have it as well. Thank you.
That's the foreign minister of Ukraine, right? Remember, I can't believe I have to remind people of this, but I'm really reminding the liberals listening to this show right now. Remember, President Zelensky of Ukraine also said, I felt no pressure, there was no attempt to extort me, bribe me, induce anything out of me. The call was perfect as far as President Zelensky was concerned. Here you have somebody who was also point man for Zelensky, who was also previously the deputy foreign affairs minister during this whole time, and is now Ukraine's foreign minister. He's saying, don't trust Lev Parnas. He's saying that Lev Parnas was trying to look like a big shot. He knew nothing. He knew nobody. Nobody was going through. He wasn't going through any channels that meant anything in Ukraine to try and get to try and quote unquote work his magic, right? So once again, we find ourselves in a position where a president is being impeached because some little numpty, it's a phrase from Britain, and it's not rude. Well, it's kind of rude, but it's not a swear word.
Is that anything like Czar of the Grifters, or is it a different connotation?
It's like a dummy, right? It's
like a jabroni.
But yeah, exactly.
Okay.
Where some numpty like Lev Parnas is trying to act like a big shot on the international stage. Meanwhile, nobody has heard of him. Nobody's paying attention to him except these guys. Except Rachel Maddow, except Anderson Cooper. And also, by the way, we saw this same thing with this drunkard from the Trump hotel lobby, right? These guys are peripheral figures. Jason, you heard it there first, from the horse's mouth. No offense, he doesn't look like a horse. Vadim Pritsenko, the foreign affairs minister of Ukraine, saying, frankly, I don't trust a word Parnas is saying. Why does CNN? Why does MSNBC?
Well, and I think that's a fascinating thing here is that, again, Christian Amanpour is doing this for CNN International. I've been watching CNN almost all day. I haven't seen a clip of this at all.
Wow.
I've seen a couple of other people pick up the story. Saw The Hill picked it up and did an article. The RNC alerted it and sent it out to people in the Republican universe. But I haven't seen it up on CNN. It's just been nonstop beating the tar out of President Trump.
Wait, they haven't played their own interview with the Ukrainian foreign minister?
Not that I've seen.
Wow.
And I think this will be a big test. I would love to be proved wrong here, but to see if AC360 plays this tonight, because they're going to have part two, or the rest of their interview with Lev Parnas. The first part played this morning on CNN's New Day. I think this will be a real test. If CNN does not play a significant portion of this interview from their own network tonight for the American audience, I think this will tell you everything that you need to know. But I think, in addition to the media coverage, this is really important to go through. I mean, we call this out first, the fact of who would be the ideal witness for President Trump. It'd be President Zelensky, the president of Ukraine. To actually, now, of course, he's not going to come in and take in Ukraine Force One and land over Andrews and come in and testify. But
No, just parachute straight into the Capitol.
Exactly. Or maybe we can Skype, and we do have technology now, Skype them into the wall of the Senate. But the fact of the matter is Ukraine's president has said no pressure, that there was no quid pro quo.
By the way, that's an interesting. Should this interview be made evidence in the Senate trial?
Absolutely.
They're putting everything else in there. They put these text messages, these WhatsApp messages that say like, "Hey, buddy, you want to grab a drink sometime?" between Lev Parnas and some other bugger nobody's heard of. Shouldn't an interview like this be entered into the evidence record?
Absolutely. I mean, again, think about this is the same thing if Mike Pompeo went out and made a formal statement. I mean, this guy is a big dog in Ukraine.
The senior most diplomat in the country.
Yes. I mean, this is a very prominent official, and he's almost kind of laughing in the interview, saying, nobody mentioned my name. Nobody gave me a call. They're running with this. He took some pretty direct, it was a lengthy interview. He took some pretty direct shots at Lev Parnas, made it pretty clear that Parnas comes across as a grifter, someone who's all about puffery, trying to elevate themselves. But again, I can't stress this enough, Raheem, that the foreign minister kept going back to the part of, we don't need some secret back channel. I talk to the Trump State Department all the time. This is ridiculous. So I think this is a big deal. And the reason why this is so key, because tonight Maddow is going to be coming back with part two for a quote-unquote explosive interview with Lev Parnas, and Anderson Cooper is going to be coming back with part two. This is a strategically designed messaging drop by the Democrats and their friends in the media. And by the way, if Rachel Maddow and her show were, if they're accurate in saying they've been working on this for months, I think they're fact witnesses here. I think they've been dealing with this on things that should have been made public, could have been made public. Seems to me that they're absolutely in cahoots with Nancy Pelosi and the Democrats who are trying to run this operation.
I agree with that. Can we come back to that point in the top of the next segment? Because what I really want to do in this segment is I want to play the rest of this interview with Christiane Amanpour. Christiane Amanpour. I want to give the audience this, because when the podcast goes up after this show, you're not going to be able to get this on CNN, right? On US CNN. So the job of the audience is share this with as many people as possible. Show them what CNN is airing around the world, but they won't show a US audience during an impeachment. Let's carry on with this.
Before you hit click there, Raheem, just super quick. I think, said this earlier, but I think Lev Parnas would be an ideal witness for Trump and for Republicans. Could you imagine the Jim Jordan, the Mark Meadows, the Matt Gaetzes, those folks cross-examining this Humpty Dumpty in the well of the Senate? They would crush this guy into 1,000 pieces, never to be put back
He's
together.
been a
again.
Humpty Dumpty and a numpty on this show.
All right,
so
let's go
far,
back to
so-
Christian.
Let me ask you, though, because you were the head of President Zelensky's office. You have been with him since the very beginning, even before you were made foreign minister. And it's very clear that Lev Parnas and others who've testified before Congress have said that this message was passed through officials. You say that your name hasn't been mentioned public. I just want to make sure that you will never receive this kind of message, verbally or otherwise, from anybody connected with Rudolph Giuliani or representing the president.
I never met Rudy, I never met this Parnas and all other name mentioned. I believe that people are now trying to raise their political importance. I never had the chance, and frankly, we don't need these channels. Our channels of communication with Americans are well established. If some of the unofficial contacts through the advisors, that's why advisors for. We took the official formal part. We were happy with the conversation. I was at all the meetings, and the conversation is a telephone on a person with President Trump, and I can tell you with all certainty that he was never mentioned that we have to do something, and President Zelensky was always telling him that whatever this message and the lesson you were teaching us all these 30 years of our independence, that it should be rule of law and should be independent judiciary and prosecutor general from the president, we finally got the message. We are not going to intervene because of some political gains. We told him, if you have information, send it through the official channels, which is Prosecutor General's office. You have your Prosecutor General, we have ours. Let them talk, cooperate. If anything to be investigated, let's investigate this.
It's pretty clear. The Ukraine foreign minister says he was in the room on the phone when his president Zelensky was on the phone with President Trump. And he says, I can tell you with all certainty, he never mentioned that we have to do something. And President Zelensky was always telling him, whatever the message and the lesson you're teaching us over these 30 years of our independence, we should have rule of law and independence of the judiciary. We finally got the message. We're not going to intervene because of some political gain. So effectively, he's going even one step further. He's saying that President Trump is actually saying, don't do anything for political gains. Do it because of the fact that you have now rule of law in Ukraine, a country that has fought and for a long time fought to try and rid its political establishment of corruption. Zelensky was elected like in a populist fashion on the basis of getting corruption, this old Soviet-style corruption, out of the Ukrainian government. That's pretty clear, isn't it, Jason?
Very clear. And I think there's a reason why you saw Speaker Pelosi and Adam Schiff both asked point blank if they thought that Lev Parnas was a credible witness in this. And both of them took a walk. Neither one of them answered it directly. They said, well, we'll see what the evidence says. The evidence could be credible. Neither one, neither Speaker Pelosi nor Shifty Adam Schiff, who's going to be leading this House impeachment effort in the Senate, neither one of them defended Lev Parnas. You know, it makes me think here, Raheem, that Schiff and Pelosi knew exactly what they were doing. They were dumping this information to try to cause trouble for President Trump, that they've never had any intention of bringing him forward as a witness, because they know that if he were to be cross-examined by the Trump team, that he would be destroyed, that there is no credibility there. But they, I mean, look at the TV, turn on CNN, turn on MSNBC, see how they're going 24/7 attacking President Trump and treating this absolute clown as if he's coming down off the mountain with a couple of tablets.
Okay, before we break, one more of these things, and we'll pick it back up after the break. Another part of this interview between Christiane Amanpour and Vadim Pritsenko.
Was there a quid pro quo as far as you know? And were you surprised when you did actually hear that military aid was being suspended?
I know personally Ambassador Salnant, and I have to again remind you that he was political appointee. He was not on the formal side either of the State Department. He was also close to the circles which were sort of trying to get in their own business-like way. Maybe he was bringing a message, but if you read even his statement, he never talked to me, although I was the advisor and then Minister of Foreign Affairs, about any pre-POC or any unofficial channels or ways of what we can do to get closer to President Trump. No, he was talking to some people who believed was instrumental at that time. I personally see that we are okay with the support we have right now, and we don't need sorry to be blunt, we don't need this unofficial support. It's not on the level when we have these Americans already. We can have the support, and if we are told that the military assistance, can be affected by some lack of reform, this is a normal conversation we had with Americans so many times before. And during this particular year you're describing right now, we had a couple of times to explain to members of Congress that we understand that the system is not coming from the sky. It is connected to some reforms we have to do, to changes, and we were doing. So it was not about political gains on any side.
Let's be very clear what he said there. We've got about 2 minutes, Jason. He said we're not. There's no interest in any unofficial channels. They didn't try and reach out through him anyway, which would have been a type of unofficial way to get through if it was Ambassador Sondland or Lev Parnas or whoever the establishment media in this country claims it would be. And then the Ukrainian foreign minister in that interview, in this what is frankly a real bombshell interview because it completely destroys the entire Nancy Pelosi narrative. He says military assistance can be affected by lack of reforms. This is a normal conversation we've had with Americans many times before. He says that if it's connected to reforms we have to do and changes we're not doing, it's not about political gains. That's the thing that they're trying to portray as the quid pro quo, right? He's saying that's quite normal, not in conversations they've had with the White House, in conversations they've had with Congress for years, that there have to be reforms. And when President Trump was on the call, the perfect call to President Zelensky, remember, he asked for assistance for us to get to the bottom of corruption that was occurring in Ukraine that could have affected the U.S. election from 2016.
Absolutely. And this is the reason why we've said from the beginning that facts are our friends here. The facts are President Trump's friends. And when we talk about the ideal witness, it's President Zelensky. When we talk about the actual facts of what's happening here, the fact that the administration went through and started looking at things back in June, 6 weeks before this phone call, the truth is on our side.
I think that's right. Right, this is War Room Impeachment, episode 118, Thursday, January 16th, 2020. When we come back, more about this bombshell interview, more about Mr. Parnas, more about what happened on Capitol Hill today. I'm Raheem Kassam. Jason Miller joins me here. Make sure in the break you're checking out warroom.org and following us on Twitter at warroom2020.
War Room Impeachment. Here's your host, Stephen K. Bannon.
Welcome back to War Room Impeachment, Thursday, January 16th, the year of our Lord 2020, episode 118. And we are so grateful for everybody who is downloading the podcast and all the podcast networks. We rocketed into the top 10 in terms of news podcasts in the entire nation on Apple iTunes this week. We're very grateful for you. We want to get into that top 5 spot, though, so send it to your friends, your family, your colleagues. Print out little War Room logos, stick them on your office fridge in your work environment, on the back of your truck, whatever it takes. We're going to get to that top 5 space. Jason Miller, Raheem Kassam here in the Capitol Hill, our very own Schiff, the historic Breitbart Embassy. We wanted to get into, on this segment, the story that came out this morning that a lot of the news has been leading with the Government Accountability Office, saying that the president broke the law. Jason, firstly, what is the Government Accountability Office for people that don't know, and should we be taking them seriously? And also, what have they said about previous presidents?
So the Government Accountability Office, which is basically like a Capitol Hill version of the permanent entrenched bureaucracy, and it's very much an extension of members of Congress, whoever's running the place themselves. And in fact, when we talk about this whole scandal here that pops up, it's always been viewed, and courts have basically ruled that it is an extension of Congress. The current head of the GAO was put in by President Obama when there was a Democratic Senate and with their Democratic House back in 2010. And again, even to the bluster that came up today with them saying that President Trump and the administration broke the law by delaying this aid to Ukraine. It was at the urging of Democratic Senator Chris Van Hollen from Maryland that this whole thing even came about.
Wait, what do you mean by that?
So,
because we keep hearing independent Government Accountability Office on television. That's what they keep telling us.
Yeah, no, that's not the case. I mean, this is very much an extension of Democrats in Congress. I mean, this is the permanent bureaucracy in Congress. So they have a very kind of highfalutin sounding name, the Government Accountability Office. It sounds very much like a white hat type organization, that they're unimpeachable, pun intended. But the fact of the matter is they are very much politically motivated. And I think there are a couple things with this drama going back and forth. We're going to get to the most important thing, the fact that you've called this and been driving this for a while here. But this makes it sound like this delay in aid was again, it's ignoring historical precedent, but also ignores what's going on right now where U.S. senators put holds on foreign aid every single day. And so this is a routine occurrence in Washington. But OMB is out with a statement. Then also Russ Vought, the OMB director, just tweeted out himself. He said, "This GAO opinion comes from the same people who said we couldn't keep national parks open during the shutdown. Recently, GAO flipped its position twice in the last few months. We wouldn't be surprised if they reverse again. Regardless, the administration complied with the law at every step." And OMB earlier said, "We disagree with GAO's opinion. OMB uses its apportionment authority to ensure taxpayer dollars are properly spent, consistent with the president's priorities and with the law." They continue, "The GAO's findings are a pretty clear overreach as they attempt to insert themselves into the media's controversy of the day. Further, GAO has a history of the flip-flops, reversing 40 years of precedent this year on their pocket rescission decision. They also were forced to reverse a legally faulty opinion when they opposed the reimbursement of federal employee travel costs." And then also, just a reminder, the administration is not bound by the GAO. Under Obama, the GAO ruled many times, i.e. with Bo Bergdahl, in disagreement with the administration. But Raheem, you called this back in episode 93. I believe it was December 30th,
Yep.
I think was the date, when I will admit, I'd never heard of the Impoundment Control Act. Never heard of it, and I imagine 99.9% of the people listening had never heard about either. But you jumped on it and seized it right away and said, this is where they're going to next. And there's significant historical context that goes into this. And you wrote it up right after that show, and you also did earlier today. Give the listeners a breakdown of what the ICA is, the historical context, and why the media is trying to twist this into something that's not.
So the GAO announces this morning, I'm going to quote, "The president has narrow, limited authority to withhold appropriations under the Impoundment Control Act of 1974. This is the law that the president, that the Trump administration is said to have broken, according to the Government Accountability Office. Here's the thing. The ICA, the Impoundment Control Act, is a very, very contentious piece of legislation. Firstly, you have to understand where it came from. Congress and the president and the presidency, the executive branch, they have rightly been warring ever since they were founded, right? That's the whole point, is that they tussle back and forth. But when Richard Nixon was limping in 1974, really reeling from the whole Watergate saga, everything, he didn't have much political capital. And the very liberal Congress at the time decided, okay, we're going to use this to our advantage. We're going to take advantage of somebody who's weak. And they placed this legislation on the books, the Impoundment Control Act, to effectively limit the president's long historical abilities to push back on Congress's spending powers and say, hey, Congress, you might say we're going to spend this, or you might want to spend X on this project or that project, whether it's domestic or foreign, but the executive branch is going to say no. The executive branch is going to be a check on you, much as you're the check on the executive branch, and we'll tussle back and forth, and that's how spending will be reined in and done more responsibly. The Congress at the time said, no, we're taking all the purse strings now. And really, if you speak to the proper nerds when it comes to the administrative state, and you read these books by great professors like John Marini and others, a lot of them will tell you 1974 and the Impoundment Control Act was really where a lot of the rabid, out-of-control spending really ramped up, when the administrative state really started, because Congress seized everything, created little fiefdoms in Congress, and therefore a lot of the lobbying efforts that used to be split between the executive and legislative branches, they all sort of got focused on these committees and these little bureaucratic entities that existed here on Capitol Hill in terms of what the US government was spending. Now that's where it all began. But let's go back a little bit further. to the third president of the United States, Thomas Jefferson. Jefferson established the first outline of controversy around this. I'm going to quote here, reporting that $50,000 in funds which Congress had appropriated for 15 gunboats on the Mississippi remained unexpended. The president stated that a favorable and peaceful turn of affairs on the Mississippi rendered an immediate execution of the law unnecessary. He was not refusing to expend the money, only delaying action to obtain improved gunboats. A year later, he told Congress the money was being spent and the gunboats were being obtained. Does that sound familiar at all to you?
Yeah, and keep in mind that President Trump, that money was freed up on September 12th, well in advance of the September 30th deadline. And again, it's the Wall Street Journal points out earlier that wouldn't this same principle apply when Vice President Biden delayed the money going to Ukraine until they fired that prosecutor? As we've seen, I'm going to get the son of a B, as former Vice President Biden said. So, yeah, this has happened a lot of times. And again, and I got to give some credit here also to a friend of the show, Congressman Darrell Issa from California, who pointed out the fact that these holds are happening all the time, that President Trump did nothing wrong here, that the aid ultimately got transferred. And again, as the Wall Street Journal points out today, what date would have made the GAO happy? Because the money was transferred in advance of it expiring.
They love nothing more than spending your money. Oh, no, wait. They love nothing more than spending your money abroad. Abe Lincoln was in favor of impoundment controls for the president. Franklin Roosevelt, Harry Truman, JFK, Lyndon Johnson, Bill Clinton, John McCain, John Kerry, Al Gore, Buchanan, Paul Ryan, Barack Obama. And I give an example in this article I've written, which is on warroom.org if you're interested. It's not very long and it is very simple. I give another example of Kennedy using the very same thing. Look, this thing that you've seen on television and on the radio stations all day long of this independent office has decided that this law has been broken and then finger wag at the president and say, we got you. Nonsense. This is quite normal. This is quite a normal tussle between the executive branch and the legislative branch. The only difference is Nancy Pelosi is standing up there in a black dress, looking like she's attending a funeral and trying to make it seem like the president is doing something completely out of the ordinary and he's a clear and present danger and must be reined in. I just want to conclude on this point, right? At the time that this was passed in 1974, so many people, more people than not, realized what a bad idea this was. What power this would give the Congress, disproportionate power in the spending process that this would give the Congress. And so today, tomorrow, the next day, when anybody says to you, listen, Trump broke the law, the independent GAO said it. No. This was a punitive piece of legislation that was actually enacted to rein Richard Nixon in. And President Trump finds himself yet again, just like Iran, just like Ukraine, just like a bunch of the other things, he finds himself on the receiving end of ire that was not meant for him.
Yeah, and I'm pretty sure that we're not going to, we're not anywhere near done hearing the last of this. It's going to continue. But I think this is another one where it's the Democrats throwing more junk out at the wall and seeing what will stick, seeing what they can do to try to knock President Trump off his game.
It's a great point. They expect people not to know what this is.
Right. And I think, there's another point here with trying to knock President Trump off of his game. And a lot of chat about this in the media. I've seen a lot of stories starting to pop on this about what President Trump should be doing as this impeachment starts on Tuesday and going forward. And Raheem, I want to get your thoughts on this. I'm of the opinion that President Trump is being the leader of the free world, having 70 million Twitter followers, should continue to do exactly what he's been doing, which is drive his positive message. Because if he's not driving it, then no one else is going to during this impeachment mess. If he's not out there driving the positive message, it'll be 100% negative information flow. We've seen from back in the polling, both from the Real Clear Politics rolling average as well as the 538, where things started to turn around in the president's benefit back in December is when we had those positive jobs numbers. Then the administration went whole hog to go and pushed those, that's when his numbers started going up. And so if he's pushing his positive message, particularly around the economy, these new trade deals. Oh, by the way, the Senate passed USMCA today. Finally got that after Nancy Pelosi obstructed and sat on it for an entire year for no reason. So we now have the China deal done. We'll have the USMCA done. I imagine there'll be a formal signing very short order. But President Trump needs to continue pushing that. I'm all in favor. If President Trump wants to go and light up Shifty Schiff or any of the Democrats when they're absolutely unfairly hitting him, I think it's great because we're in a completely new world here. This is not back in days of Andrew Johnson or back in the Clinton impeachment. I mean, this is a whole new world. And Raheem, I want to get your thoughts on what you think the White House and the president should be doing as far as communication strategies once this impeachment gets rolling.
Well, look, I'm an always escalate kind of guy, and people will know that from me in my personal life as much as it is in my professional life. If I feel hard done by in any way, shape, or form, I will double and triple my response. Go nuclear, whatever, however you want to describe it. And I'm always a lean in type of person as well. If somebody is trying to do something to you that you know is actually morally bankrupt and that is offensive and offends your character and offends the things you stand for, much like what the media and the Democrats have been doing to this president since before day one of his presidency. And then at this point you lean in. You appoint some of the most ferocious attack dogs in the House to represent you during this Senate trial. The people who know about the detail, who have legislative affairs directors who know about the detail of the things like the Empowerment Control Act. You take people who are great on television, you put them forward, you lean into this process and you say, you know what, you guys have this kind of weird fetish for Lev Parnas. Fine. You want to drop 458 pages of documents in 2 days? We'll have him as a witness. Let him get cross-examined. Let him get chopped up by somebody other than the lightweight Anderson Cooper who let this guy off the hook last night and this morning. Put him up there. Put all of them up there and kick the bums out.
I think that's perfect. I think that's spot on. And I think also, too, I think the Democrats, we've talked about this on the show, have made a real mistake by making Adam Schiff the face of the House impeachment effort for the simple fact that Schiff is now viewed as such a partisan figure. And I think President Trump has done something really smart here, which is to single out Schiff and beat up on him very early in the process.
Yep.
Schiff was not someone with significant national name ID prior to this impeachment push. Obviously, he got a lot more attention during the Russia hoax, being out there attacking the president, being on cable TV. But now he is going to be front and center. But when he goes out there and starts attacking President Trump, he's essentially an arm of the Democratic Party. He's not being viewed as Mr. Impartial or Mr. Independent. He is a walking, talking, lying, leaking partisan figure purely out there to try to take down President Trump. And again, this is his first impeachment attempt because we know that they're not going to stop. They're going to come back. And in fact, 6 of the 7 House impeachment managers advocated impeachment even before the whistleblower came out. And so that is, I think that's such a critical point. I mean, literally some of these folks campaigned on it in their campaign back in 2018. Yep. Rah, let's go and impeach. This is before the whistleblower. This is before any phone call with Zelensky or any hold-on aid after President Trump saw the article in the Washington Examiner back in June of 2019. Before any of this, they have been on this witch hunt. And again, it's part of, as Steve always says, the nullification project of Donald J. Trump. And this is why I think it's so important that we do drill down and expose this for exactly what it is, because they're going to come back. They've indicated that in court documents. They'll come back, whether it's Iran or some other shenanigans that they will find to try to attack him.
Yeah, could it possibly be that after years of not being able to find anything, of knowing that the Russia thing wasn't going to last and was going to blow back in their faces, they found some guy who had been in the NSC, who was back in the CIA, and they found this guy, and he goes and gives a complaint to Adam Schiff, and this whole process gets started. It's an insult. It's an insult, quite frankly, because of how many millions of dollars this has cost, how much time and effort it is taking out of the people in this country in terms of how much they're having to prop this up. Not just in terms of the upfront cost, by the way. The back-end cost is just as bad. The delay to passing things like USMCA is billions and billions of dollars. The distractions for this White House, the distractions for lawmakers on Capitol Hill, the distractions of what's going on in the news. Hey, listen, actually, we don't really need this partisan bickering on the news every night. There are real things going on in this country. There are violence problems all over this country, in Chicago, in all sorts of places like this. There is not clean water. There is a homelessness crisis. There is an opioid crisis. There are real problems out there in the United States of America that need addressing. And what did journalists want to carry on doing is, oh, Miss Pelosi, why don't you please tell us your thoughts today on the impeachment process? Nobody cares. Everybody's bored of this now. I'm so glad we're close to wrapping this up. I'll miss the show, Jason. I'll miss seeing your face every morning. But I am so glad that we are looking towards the end zone here. Is that a sports metaphor?
No, I think that's spot on. But the other little aspect of whining, very much in the the beta world that we're living in now. Democratic senators who have to come back and actually participate as jurors in this, especially those who are on the presidential campaign trail. 4 of them are. Cory Booker's not anymore because he dropped out because nobody likes him. But starting today, obviously, I have Senator Bernie Sanders, Elizabeth Warren, Amy Klobuchar, and don't forget about Michael Bennett, or Benet, as you point out, because there's only one T at the end there. They have to be back. This is actually going to be a really big deal as we come down the final 2 weeks. I mean, keep in mind, this impeachment trial starts on Tuesday, which is 2 weeks to the day to State of the Union. But 2 weeks from Monday, that's when we're coming up on Iowa. And this thing is just right around the corner. I mean, the Iowa caucuses are Monday, February 3rd. This thing is right around the corner, and Bernie Sanders and Elizabeth Warren in particular, their rear ends are going to have to be in D.C. 6 days a week, which makes it kind of easy for Sleepy Joe Biden and Mayor Pete to continue to pick up ground in Iowa. But Bernie Sanders is out there whining about it quite a bit. Amy Klobuchar has a little bit more of a positive outlook, saying her husband, her daughter will pick up the slack. But it's worth noting Bernie Sanders' comment. He definitely sounds grumpy and views it as a waste of time out. Maybe he's still just mad that Elizabeth Warren roughed him up after the debate the other night.
Yeah, I think that's right. Jason, there's a couple of things I've wanted to do for a while, and I've promised to do for a while, and haven't done on this show so far. And one of those is actually get to some of the reviews that get left on the podcast. We always ask for reviews, and I've always said, we're going to read them, some of the best out. And we do send them out in the emails, but I wanted to stick to my promise and read some of them out. And I'm literally just going through right now and just picking ones. I haven't pre-prepared these or anything. There's one called Listen, Mr. President, Please. It says, it's from Carol in Michigan. She says, I sure hope the president is listening to these podcasts. These gentlemen do the best and quickest research and offer their expertise and sound advice. Thank you for this great public service. Carol in Michigan. Isn't that nice, Jason? But there are also, I love these. We get maybe 50 positive reviews and maybe one bad one from somebody on the left. I want to read one of the 1-star reviews, if I may, from one of the lefties. I think it's called Chagrined Independent, it says, via Apple Podcasts. This episode was delicious. The palpable sense of panic at hearing their innocent, soon-to-be fully exonerated president, whose perfect call was nothing more than a policy dispute, might have relevant first-hand witnesses called in the Senate trial, was a joy to listen to. Kassam promises to end the careers of any senator that votes to hear from Bolton, Mulvaney, etc. The arrogance on display was breathtaking. Complete proof these guys know damn well that Trump is guilty as sin, and that even if the enslaved GOP Senate finds some way to acquit him, the evidence will be plain for all to see. Wow.
That was nice.
Really upset someone.
I'm just glad that they're subscribing and downloading the podcast every day. So even if they're haters, it's helping us surge up the chart, which is good. I mean, but on a serious note there, Raheem, we joke about this, but you've heard the anecdotal feedback on this. I've heard it. Steve's heard it. We're seeing it pop up. I mean, look at today's press conference with Speaker Pelosi when they asked about delaying the State of the Union until after this impeachment drama is over. That was something that we first put forward here on on the show. And now it's turning into questions are being asked to Speaker Pelosi, which, by the way, Speaker Pelosi replied that if the president wants to delay it, that he'll be able to. Although she did throw out this garbage about he could just submit a written State of the Union, because that used to be the historical tradition. Like, thanks, Speaker Pelosi. I'm sure we're going to just miss this opportunity. I mean, President Trump's only going to have about 17 more of these that he gets to do as our permanent president, just to go and trigger him. But this look, we're having an impact here. Not only are the conservatives paying attention, the left is paying attention, and that's good.
Hey, Stephen K. Bannon is going to be on Trish Regan tonight at 8 p.m. I think it is. Jason, what channel is that?
Yep, that'll be on the Fox Business Network. So tune in. Steve will be on for the full hour, which is pretty big deal.
Wow. Well, he took this full hour off, so he can at least do some work later on today. This has been War Room Impeachment, episode 118, Thursday, January 16th. Jason Miller, Raheem Kassam. Make sure you head over to warroom.org, download the podcast, leave us a review. We'll see you bright and early, 9 a.m. tomorrow morning, War Room Impeachment.